It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. My apologies for the delay. It's been almost 2 weeks since the last show. I don't know where the time went. It is a little challenging for me at the beginning of a quarter because I have to do my billing for my business and send out all the documents to all the clients. And that does take out some time, but, you know, the 4th of July holiday and all the big parties we went to. No, I'm kidding. I'm kind of on the really concerned side for this COVID thing. We did go to a small family event, I guess, 10 or 12 people, and I was the one person sitting in a chair that I brought, so I didn't have to touch their chairs. And I pulled it out of my car and sat down under the shade of a tree, even though other people were hanging out in the garage and mingling and talking and playing cards and stuff. And I'm in like 15 feet from everybody and with my mask on. Even though I'm outside, I had my mask on in my own chair and, you know, got to visit for a while and left. And maybe, let's hope, none of them, any of them get sick. Nobody they know gets sick. But I don't want to deal with this shit. So there's that. Another thing, a lot of people liked my explanation of how I started the business and how I got into it from the previous episode. I think it was the previous episode. It's been so long. So thank you for all of the kind emails that I got about that. One question that a couple of people did ask is that apparently I had said something rather negative about having employees and that I didn't want to have employees, and people were curious what was bubbling under, what caused that. What caused that was many years of being in management, particularly in retail, in an accounting, in a transportation department, in trucking. I was in charge of a company's division on delivering appliances and furniture in about 10 or 12 locations in Missouri, Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, a touch bit into Michigan and Iowa, but, you know, you got the general idea. And worked with many managers and many, many employees. And, you know, the first time or two that you've got to fire somebody, it's kind of rough. After I got to, 50 or 80 or 90, it started getting a little easier. It turns out not everyone has the same desire to succeed and put forth the effort required by a specific job as one might imagine. I used to think that there were two kinds of people that liked the job that they were doing and stayed, and people that didn't like their job and went and did something else. I was completely unaware of a third category, which is pretty big apparently. People that loathe their job, hate every fucking minute of it, and stay. Now, I have been caught a little bit, sometimes for months, in jobs that I didn't like, maybe even a whole year for one, but these people would just hang on, and it's difficult to get a new job. It's difficult to get a replacement job, and one thing that would be nice for people, I think, is that your employer should have nothing to do with your health care. So if you decide to leave your job, you still have health care provided by the system for everybody, because we should be looking out for each other. But anyway, I had to deal with employees stealing, lying, cheating, grotesque incompetence and stupidity. And so the idea of me growing my business and rolling the dice and hiring somebody who would probably be a delightful person, whoever that might be, because, I would like to think that I'm smart and I can interview people and I can find a good candidate. I just know from experience, weird things happen. I could tell you all kinds of stories about working in the trucking industry. And one of the things I tell people, it taught me how to swear. That was nice because I was pretty fresh, only a couple years out of getting my MBA when I got into the trucking industry. And I would use all those fancy buzzwords like maximize and leverage our potentiality and all these things that you're supposed to say in a PowerPoint presentation to a bunch of executives who also don't really know what they're doing, but put on a good show. And I would talk like that in front of 20 or 30 people that were delivering refrigerators and couches for a living. And they could not get it. They could not connect. And it's not an intelligence thing. It's a language thing. So I started using profanity and swear words and changing how I was talking to them. And I remember someone said to me, Phil, don't go down to their level. And I immediately realized it's not a level thing. I'm not smarter than them. I may be more educated in a specific set of information, the stuff that was presented in my MBA class. But these people often know a lot of things that I don't know because they've lived more time in the real world while I was off in luxury at getting my MBA. I worked to pay for my MBA as I went, but you understand what I'm saying. They're not lesser than me. They use a different language. And so I just had to learn that language and how to communicate with them. And it went much better. I guess that's the point. So hopefully that came across as wonderfully nice as possible as I meant it. So yeah, I will not be expanding my business. I will not be hiring new employees. Probably the best thing that I've done, I do know of a few people that have contacted me and asked how to do what I'm doing. And as far as the time and effort, it is comically easy. Almost too easy, because if you can pass the Series 65 exam, that's probably the hard part. To get started, you have to pass the Series 65 exam. But then you can hire an attorney and startup companies and everything to get registered and get licensed with the government to set up a company, to get all the forms and documents that you need, your contracts, your disclosure documents, all of that. You can pay people to do all of that stuff. And it'd probably be as little as 10 grand, maybe 15 grand, depending on the state that you're in. And you could be set up, assuming you pass the Series 65. And passing a Series 65 means you knew enough to pass that test. It doesn't really mean that you know what to do in the investment world. And of course, the big problem, and almost every and all business has this problem, is how do you get clients? And that's the hardest part of almost every business. So anyway, I wanted to address in my long fashion why I will not be hiring employees. But if someone is curious about this industry and how it works and how to do it, and the people that they should contact to get set up in this industry on their own, which, like I said, is a big and scary challenge, because once you get set up and you're out all this money, how do you get clients? I don't have the easy answer for that. I did it very slowly and gradually over time. While I had good paying day jobs, I helped a few clients, and then a few more, and then a few more, and then a few more. And mostly over time, it grew and it grew and it grew. And then, quite honestly, my promotions in the atheist, humanist, skeptical, whatever movement at a time where conventions were exploding was very serendipitous. Is that the right use of that word? But very fortunate for me. And I was able to go to many, many conferences and promote many times. And then, of course, the podcast, which apparently I like to talk. So that's a really handy thing to have if you want to do a podcast. Anyway, today, in a few minutes from now, we are going to have an interview with Helaine Olen. And she has been on the show before, and she's written a couple of books. One is called Pound Foolish, and the other one is Index Card Investing, I believe is the exact title, where her and a colleague came up with this idea that everything you need to know about investing you can write on an index card. And of course, the index card has good information, but clearly they needed to write a book to explain the index card. There is more to know, but you can get some really basic fundamental things right off the bat, like one of the things they have on the card. Save money. They went with the more traditional 10%, but in a previous interview, Helaine admitted that for most people, 10% is not enough, but they didn't want to scare people. Another thing is use index funds. It phenomenally low cost, very tax efficient. Use IRAs and 401ks where you can. Mostly stocks and then some more bonds when you get closer to retirement. I mean, these are really basic fundamental things. So you can get 20, 30, 50% better or closer to optimal portfolios really easily. It's the little details that ratchet up your performance and allow you to keep more money as you go along that are harder to get to and harder to understand. So we do have the interview with her, and I also have a little segment right after this coming break talking about possible changes or what they're calling exemptions, whatever, from what is allowed to be done by someone who's claiming to be a fiduciary. And of course, there's a whole segment on it, but the real short, a few years ago, the Department of Labor was, under Obama, was going to expand the fiduciary definition to apply to more advisors and salespeople and force them to act in their client's best interest. That died, and now they're going the opposite direction, where they're going to say even the people who are currently fiduciaries may be able to do all kinds of things and sell and promote and get kickbacks and bonuses on all kinds of things. Everything that I think would not be a fiduciary might be, all of that stuff would be exempted, and you could still theoretically call yourself a fiduciary while doing things that, in my humble opinion, make you not a fiduciary, and this makes Phil sad. So listen to the information on fiduciaries and what might change, the interview with Helaine Olen, and then, of course, at the end, I'll have something to say to wrap it all up. Thanks for being here. All right, this Investing Skeptically segment is just a little bonus update of some unfortunate news coming out of our government, the Department of Labor specifically in this case. You may recall a couple of years ago when we had Obama as president, the Department of Labor was working on expanding the definition of fiduciary, which would require more people that give advice for a fee to investors to act in the client's best interest and not their own best interest, which I said quite brutally would be wonderful for the average investor, but bad for Phil because it would take away a huge competitive advantage that me and some other advisors have because we act as fiduciaries, unlike a lot of brokers and investment companies that do not act as fiduciaries. So it's easy for me to compare my business model to theirs, and easily for me to say that I think it's a huge advantage for the investor to know that I'm doing what's in your best interest, not mine. But anyway, I was supporting it because it's the right thing for the average person. It got delayed and delayed again, and then Trump won the White House, and it got delayed again, and then pushed back a whole nother year, and then it just disappeared. Therefore, people who were concerned about having to follow fiduciary rules have been exempted, continue to enjoy, I guess, the fact that they do not have to act as a fiduciary. And one of the things I tell people all the time when you're talking to a potential advisor, if that's the route you want to go down, ask them if they are a fiduciary. And I can't even believe I have to add this extra caveat. Ask them if they will be a fiduciary 100% of the time. Because I have had people come to me that they said their advisor is acting as a fiduciary, but they come to find out only for one or more of the accounts, but not for all accounts, or not for all situations. Or they're a fiduciary in the IRA account, but not in the taxable account. Or they're a fiduciary with this one account, but not when they sold them a long-term healthcare insurance product. So if you're not acting as a fiduciary 100% of the time, in my opinion, you're not a fiduciary. It has to be all of the time or it's not. So make sure it's perfectly clear. Ask them straight up. Don't beat around the bush. Just go, are you a fiduciary 100% of the time? And will you put that in writing? If they tell you anything other than, yes, I am, and yes, I will, you can assume that they are not a fiduciary. Not necessarily bad, but now you know that they're working for themselves. They may be heavily involved in helping you do better. It doesn't mean that it can't work. It's just something you should know. Well, now the Department of Labor has gone a continued step in the direction of, I guess, opening up the definition or exempting from fiduciary requirements so someone can claim to be a fiduciary. And if this rule is approved, and I can't see that it's not going to be this year, because they're going to want to get it done before anyone loses their office in the House or the Senate or the president. And so the new ruling would allow financial. Let me see. I'm going to read this. This is from a report that I got. It's an industry report. But if you look under Investment News website, I searched for fiduciary, Department of Labor exemption, third-party payments, I think was the search terms I used. If you can't find something, just let me know. I'll send you a link. And, of course, you can email me at any time, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. But I'm going to read a little bit from this internal financial website that I don't think is shareable, but it'll have the same stuff somewhere else. Quote, the exemption would allow financial institutions and professionals to receive a wide variety of payments that would otherwise violate the prohibited transaction rules, including, but not limited to, commissions, 12B1 fees, trailing commissions, sales loads, markups, markdowns, and revenue sharing payments from investment providers or third parties. End quote. So basically, someone could now say they are a fiduciary, if this rule goes through, and I assume that it's going to. You can say that you're a fiduciary and then do all of the things that make you not a fiduciary. And there is some caveat. You can do all these things as long as you put your client's interest first still. Well, if you're putting your client's interest first, you're not getting commissions. You're probably not collecting 12B1 fees. You're not getting sales loads up front. You're definitely not taking markup and markdown. And you're not taking other payments and proposals and vacations and all the stuff that might motivate an advisor to choose something that benefits them, maybe while benefiting you, but maybe not while benefiting you. And it's that even the apparent conflict of interest bothers me. It's not like, why can't you just do this job and help people? It's not hard to make money. Why do you have to make that much money? Why do you have to make 5 or 10 or 15% commission up front? Why can't you just get a fee and earn that fee every year? Anyway, that's my high horse. That is a new proposed ruling on what someone can do or be allowed to do or be allowed to collect third-party payments and still claim to you that they are a fiduciary. So maybe even just asking if they're a fiduciary 100% of the time is not enough. You might have to ask them what they mean by that. One of the phrases I like, and I think it still works, is if an advisor says they are a fiduciary and fee only, and they should articulate that the only way they get paid is by you, the paying client, because people will work for or represent the people that are paying them. So be on the lookout. You've been advised.
How do we justify, as it were, faith that science will give us the truth? It works. Planes fly, cars drive, computers compute.
It's an inductive argument.
If you base medicine on science, you cure people. If you base the design of planes on science, they fly. If you based the design of rockets on science, they reach the moon. It works, bitches.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Okay, everybody, it's that time. We're going to talk to a financial guru, expert on politics and what in the hell's going on in the world. And her name is Helaine Olen. Are you there?
I am here.
I am so delighted. We were talking pre-show that you're now writing for two organizations. And, of course, I know one is the Washington Post. What was the other one?
Well, I'm not writing as much as I'm editing for a publication of the New School in New York called Public Seminar.
Nice.
Which is academic writing kind of for a general audience. So a lot of politics, economics, anthropology, and the like.
Sounds like all the stuff I know nothing about, so maybe I can accidentally learn just by talking to you. For people who don't know, Helaine has been on the show before. I don't know if we call her a regular yet, but she's been on the show before. Put out a book in 2016 called The Index Card, Why Personal Finance Doesn't Have to Be Complicated. And, of course, we've already done the joke about a whole book about an index card, so we're not going to go there. And also a nice book, a little older, Pound Foolish, exposing the dark side of personal finance. But you were saying that you write more about politics now. What's going on? Anything interesting in politics?
Well, I mean, we have a massive crisis on our hands.
Which one are you thinking of?
It's kind of unreal what we're living through. So what do you want me to talk about? Where do I start? With our president?
Your most
recent...
I think we'll get to those people by accident, but your most recent Washington Post article, 4th of July and COVID-19, what are your thoughts? Is COVID fake?
Is COVID fake? Are you kidding me? I live in New York, for God's sake.
Yeah.
No, COVID is most certainly not fake. I mean, what's been kind of fascinating is we might be living through the first pandemic where people are viewing it in purely political terms. So on one side, you have a group of people who are absolutely denying this exists, think that masks are not necessary, which begs to protect themselves or protect others, which begs the question of why they believe doctors at hospitals wear masks. Because presumably, if they don't work, why would you do that in a hospital?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
we've almost gone to full germ theory debate.
But on the other side, I have to say, you have, people who are insisting that, this is insanely lethal, that, school children will die if they go back to school, and are all but hysterical about this. So there's really no reasoned rational discourse about this disease at this point, which is an incredibly frustrating situation to be in if, say, you live in this country and you're trying to figure out, will your child go back to school in the fall? Will there be school? How will there be school? And fill in the blank. How do you live your life? Do you go back to work? Do you go to an office? Who's an essential worker? Why do we call some people essential workers? Why don't we pay them very well if they're so essential, and so on?
Well, I guess the easy answer is that all of the classrooms will be filled with 4,000-watt UVC lights, and everything will be fine.
Right, but we also know that kids don't get this very often, or if they do, they're completely asymptomatic.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a question of how do you protect the teachers? And this is the reason this is such an issue, in part, is because we literally have zero in the way of national guidance. Betsy DeVos, who is the Secretary of Education, who I have said from the get-go,
one of your
is
favorites,
the absolute bottom of the barrel, worst member of Trump's cabinet. And by the way, that is strong competition there.
I know.
We're talking about your competitors are people like Wilbur Ross, who is accused of stealing money from his former business partners, people who put small children in cages at the border. I mean, this is really a rogues gallery of, just not terrific people. But Betsy DeVos is responsible for the education of millions upon millions of the nation's public school children.
By job title,
and
anyway.
Betsy DeVos is what I call an education hobbyist. She did not study education in college. She never worked as a public school teacher of any sort. She is a wealthy heiress who did not attend public school, attended religious school, and did the same with her own children. So this is somebody who is supposedly weighing in on public school, and I notice I use the word supposedly, who has zero experience with it, except for what she believes should be done, right? Which in her case is charter and religious schools, and this became her cause in life, or as I like to say, her hobby. And Trump appoints her as education secretary, and she does about as well as could be expected, by which I mean she doesn't do much at all. So the latest round is that she, as of Wednesday, today is July 7th, 8th, right?
8, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so for everybody who's listening to this afterwards, said at a press conference that children should go back to school in the fall, and said, by the way, it's up to every single jurisdiction to figure out how to do it. In other words, she is giving no guidance whatsoever and is leaving thousands upon thousands of school districts, municipalities, states, fill in the blank, to figure out and reinvent the wheel all on their own over and over again.
Well, and she's just following her.
It's simply astonishing.
Yeah, she's following.
The Department of Education has issued next to no guidance.
She's following Trump's lead because they put out some standards, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and then basically abdicated responsibility, which in a sad way might be as good as we're going to get from this administration. Abdication, and puts it all in the states and the cities and the counties, and then they can say, hey, we didn't mess it up because we didn't do anything. We put out rules, and if you didn't follow those rules, which you couldn't follow anyway, then it's your fault, and it's not my fault as Donald Trump. I want to be reelected.
I think it goes even deeper than that. I think the issue is that the Trump administration from the get-go has had no real agenda other than tearing down the agenda of
Agreed.
others. So Trump's MO from the get-go has been, if Obama was for it, I'm against it. And he has spent the past 4 years ripping apart pretty much anything Obama tried to do. There is actually very little in the way of a positive, forward-thinking agenda here.
And thank God for that.
Make America Great is an agenda, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
a slogan.
And
He has literally come up with nothing that anybody can see over 4 years, which is part of why he is now reduced to going to campaign rallies and going on about statues, because this is just, at this point, full-on chaos. The man does not know how to govern. So we are living through a pandemic that he has, at various points, denied, tried to convince us didn't exist with positive thinking, promoted miracle cures about, like injecting yourself with bleach, if I'm remembering that one right.
And light.
And is now simply trying to tell people to just go through it. Now, none of this is actually an agenda for how things should be done. At no point has the man managed to get adequate testing together. At no point have they managed to, establish contact tracing. At no point have they come up with a coherent agenda. Anthony Fauci and the CDC were denying that masks worked at the beginning of this pandemic, and then only switched afterward, which in fact fed the conspiracy theories, to be fair to people who believe in conspiracy theories about this. I mean, there was just no organization whatsoever. But that's what you would exactly expect from the Trump administration. There was never any organization, and there was never any real agenda.
Well, and there's so many jobs that haven't been filled yet. They're not going to get filled. And then almost every single job, like Betsy DeVos, got there through connections or money or donations, and they're almost exclusively selected to have a specific agenda to destroy what they're put in charge of.
Right, which is a sort of anti-agenda, as I would say.
Yeah.
There's no positive vision for what the country is. There is simply a vision of what they don't want. It's like a 3-year-old. When my older son was in primary school, there was a child who was acting out, and he would walk around the class and knock over everybody else's. You know how 3-year-olds, in nursery schools, they build with blocks, and that this is a whole thing. And this poor child, whose parents were going through this terrible time, was walking around the classroom systematically knocking over building after building after building. And then, of course, all the other 3-year-olds did not want to play with this child. Surprise, surprise. And there was this whole thing where the teachers were trying to work with this child to explain, you can't behave like this. This is not how you're going to build relationships with your fellow peers. Of course, they didn't say it that way to a 3-year-old. I think that's what they told the mother. But the point is this is not a way you're going to accomplish anything. But this is exactly what the Trump administration has been now for 3.5 years. They are this child who has been walking through the class, knocking over all the various building blocks.
And I can almost understand him doing that agenda. What I cannot understand is that virtually every single Republican, until they retire, sides with Trump, supports with Trump, no matter how pathetically and half-assed they do it. They're okay with it because they're getting something. What's going on there?
You've got me. I mean, the argument is that they're afraid to buck the system. That if they buck the system, they're not going to get reelected, or Trump is going to go after them viciously on his Twitter feed. And I do think you have begun to see in the past couple of weeks a kind of gradual tiptoeing away, which makes sense as Biden has done so well in the polls, because Biden actually doesn't need to campaign at this point and doesn't need a particularly strong. This is such a flaming catastrophe that you can't even imagine how on earth anybody is going to vote for Trump. Though, in fact, I'm guessing about 40+% of the population will.
Yeah,
right?
I've recently
have jobs, and by the way, his ignoring of COVID is impacting, as one of the largest groups, his supporters, people over the age of 65 who are at the most risk. I mean, it's actually kind of a fascinating thing. Is I don't believe we've ever had a president who has actively damaged his own supporters, his own base. It's kind of wild.
I think Trump may have turned on COVID when someone told him that it affects African Americans more than white Americans, which actually
right, but it affects elderly people more than anybody.
Yeah, but
the average age of death is somewhere around 79, 80. So that means 50% of the people who are dying are over that, and that's Trump's base. I mean, the majority of people over the age of 65 voted for Trump. I mean, it is his strongest group. So it is simply astonishing to me that he has not taken this seriously.
Yeah, a few years ago, and I can't remember which comedian I'm stealing this from, said something like, last year, Fox News lost 3 million viewers, may they rest in peace. Because that's the only way out from the Fox cult is to die.
Right. I mean, but I don't want to, underestimate the impact of this. This has very much, and I've written about this quite extensively, has very much disproportionately impacted both the African American and Latino communities. And that's no doubt what Trump is thinking. But the man is such an idiot, he doesn't seem to realize, I mean, it's just the most base, selfish level, that the group that is most impacted are his base supporters of the elderly.
Yeah, and I think it might be the best thing that we have going for us is that he's not intelligent and does not have a particular forward agenda, because he might be able to pull it off at this point.
I can't see how he can pull anything off. I mean, I've always been an economic determinist when it comes to people and voting in presidential elections. And when you've got over 20% unemployment, which is the situation right now, if you're counting the real number, the number of
the U3,
as it's certainly much higher than what the official unemployment numbers are picking up, because anybody who isn't looking isn't counted, and a lot of people are not looking at the moment for rather obvious reasons. I mean, There's an argument to be made about that.
Well, my Fox News watching
but
conservative...
The point is when you've got unemployment like that and you're the person in charge, this is your problem, okay? There is no way, I don't care how many times he says, I don't accept responsibility.
Yeah.
He is responsible. And as far as anybody can tell, common sense says, and indeed polls are showing, that the majority of people believe he is responsible. That is just how people think about these things, as well they should. So, I mean, I think there's this sort of idea that his support was unmovable. And it certainly felt that way for a long time. But what it seems like now was that his support was kind of this combination of people, angry about the gains of minorities in this country, but also the fact that we were in economic good times, and Trump had a sort of ghastly entertainment value. I mean, when things were going okay, it was kind of funny in a sort of sick way to watch his press conferences sometimes.
Wow.
I mean, the man was sort of funny. I mean, nobody wants to admit that, but he was entertaining.
He is an entertainer.
Right. I mean, and, as I said, when the economy was going fine, a lot of people were prepared to look away and just sort of ignore the parts that they didn't like, because at the end of the day, people want money. I mean, that's how we live in this world.
It is.
And that's no longer true. And suddenly everybody's like, wait a second, I was had. I mean, and you can talk to voters and see it too. Pollsters are picking this up. I'm right now in a Republican stronghold in southern Orange County, California. You're seeing real, gaps in his support breaking out here. I've talked to people here who, voted for him in 2016 who have said they will not vote for him again. I mean, it's real. It's really real.
I'm going to do a hard right-hand turn here, not political right-hand turn, just random turn to another article that you wrote, because we can fit in a little bit of finance stuff. But it's titled, Day Trading Will End Badly for Everyone Who Tries It. And, of course, don't remember everything about an article I just pulled up out of random without you being warned. But what were you going for there?
Oh, okay. So day trading is back. One of the rather sad side effects of COVID that doesn't really make even the top 10, but is still nonetheless a problem, is that we seem to have a lot of people who are at home fairly bored with some money coming in, who have decided that the thing to do is to day trade. All of you might remember day trading ending very badly for a lot of people, or at least if you're over 40 or so, after the dot-com bust. Most people do not do very well at day trading. And this has become a whole thing, in part because the head of Barstool Sports, David Portnoy, who has nothing to do at the moment because there are no sports, as we all know, has set himself up, because he can't gamble on sports, as a day trading guru. Even though it's not clear, the man knows a stock from, I don't know what we could say, a CD fund, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, he is now an online guru, and he admits he knows nothing about stocks. His Twitter biography says, don't follow my advice. But nonetheless, apparently millions of people are at least paying attention to him, and some number of them are day trading, and we can see this in the numbers that it has made a big gain over the past several months. And there was a rather dreadful suicide of a young man who's a student, I believe, at the University of Nebraska, but was living in Illinois, who misread his account at Robinhood.
Yeah, Robinhood. That's
didn't
tragic.
Settle properly. It's still not totally clear what happened, but in any case, was under the impression he had lost $750,000. He did not, but before that became clear, he had killed himself. So this has become an issue now that people are talking about. So for anybody who is listening, day trading is not a good thing. You are probably not going to make money at it. We know survey work shows that year in, year out, less than 1% of people are capable of beating the stock market averages. We know that during the last dot-com boom, the vast majority of people who did day trading basically, lost their investments within 6 months. That was in a congressional investigation that was conducted after the end of that period. It's just an insanely bad idea.
Well, I know I've known many people who've made a fortune day trading until they ran out of money.
You make money until you lose it all.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like gambling. It's essentially gambling.
It is gambling, yeah.
And, the argument is that some people push back. It means that, well, this is a harmless form of entertainment, and they have nothing better to do, and it's akin to playing the lottery, especially if you're a young person, right? To which my response is, A, I'm not a big fan of the lottery either, but secondarily, it's not harmless because people can get themselves into real financial trouble. The lottery is actually a much better thing because while your chances of winning are just about nil, the chances are you're not going to get yourself into massive financial trouble playing the lottery. But in this case, you could get yourself into huge amounts of trouble. People borrow money, to do this. You hear all sorts of crazy stories at a certain point, and people really end up in a deep hole.
Yeah, I've had people say things to me like, well, I'm just using $10,000 that I can afford to lose. And I don't,
right.
What the hell does that mean? I don't have $10,000 that I can afford to lose. I don't want to lose any money. I mean, I know the market goes up and down, but this idea that I have this pile of cash that if you throw a match on it and just light it up, I'm going to be okay with it. No, that doesn't exist in Phil's world.
Right, and it doesn't exist in very many people's world. Somebody sent me survey work today, and unfortunately I can't tell you who it is, but the essentially of people under the age of 30, already 40% have run through their emergency monies. I mean, people need money, and making more back day trading is generally not a good idea. It's probably not going to work out.
Have you had any thoughts on the pending end of the $600 bonus for unemployment?
I certainly hope it returns.
Okay.
I think we've got a real mess on our hands if it doesn't,
yeah.
Because state unemployment is at most usually a couple of $100s a week. That's not going to replace very many people's salary. And at the same time, of course, one of the reasons the $600 worth a week was put in was to also help with gig workers whose income can be all over the place. And it's also not clear how they will be taken care of as this is moving forward. So unemployment needs to be extended. The extra money a week needs to be extended, and gig workers need to be extended.
Well,
if you're asking me, do I think that people should be getting more money from unemployment than they do when working, I would point out that this demonstrates just how badly so many American workers are actually paid and suggests that we really need to address that issue.
Absolutely. Well said, because that's one of the things is that if $600 somehow seems to you more than what you made working, wow, that's brutal. I mean, maybe in a very small town in mid-America you could do that, but $600, damn, that's not a lot of that. You can't even make a car payment on a relatively late model car.
Right. I mean, it's really extraordinary that that it is actually an issue that more people are making more money on unemployment than they were while working. I mean, in all seriousness, it is a major issue, but it is not a major issue in the way the scolds would have you think it. I mean, it really, as I said, points to a much bigger problem in our economy, and it's arguably one of the things that has been driving all the anger in our country for the past 10, 15 years, is that, a very small group has, come out, better and better with each passing year, and a lot of other people continue to fall behind in a major way.
I could not agree more, and I do know that we had kind of a hard time stopping. We're there. You can throw in anything else you want. You can run away. You can promote your books, whatever you'd like to do here as you get ready to go.
Oh, my publishers always say I have to promote my books. So, Pound Foolish, Exposing the Dark Side of the Personal Finance Industry, or the book I co-wrote with Harold Pollack, The Index Card, Why Personal Finance Doesn't Have to Be Complicated. And, of course, you should read me at the Washington Post or read my publication, Public Seminar, at the New School.
Excellent. And again, in case everybody missed it at the beginning, Helaine Olen. And I appreciate you always every time you come on the show. And thank you for the great insights today.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
A lot of people come up here and they thank Jesus for this award. I want you to know that no one had less to do with this award than Jesus. He didn't help me a bit. If it was up to him, Caesar Milan would be up here with that damn dog. So all I can say is, suck it, Jesus. This award
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Again, thank you for being here and listening to the show. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who gives the 5-star reviews. And a special thanks to everyone that goes to patreon.com/Phil and kicks in $1, $2, $5, or even the top tier of $6.66 per episode. Keeping in mind that if I am late with a show or I skip a whole week without even noticing it, you're not out anything, because it's not a weekly or monthly donation thing. It's a per episode thing. So if I put out shows a little bit less often, you're out less money, but it is a very nice way to say, Phil, I value what you are creating, and here's a couple of bucks. Of course, you could just share the show with your friends, and hopefully they find value in the information about religion, politics, and money, the three things you shouldn't discuss with your family, at least if you want to stay a family for some people, I guess. Speaking of friends and family, I have lost a cousin. Now, I guess I shouldn't have phrased it that way. He's alive. He's healthy. He's as healthy as he was. But it turns out that after years of trying to have rational conversations with my cousin, after years of him personally attacking and name-calling me on Facebook, even once, literally, yes, I shit you not, claiming that I was a baby eater for being an atheist, and for him being upset that I wasn't who he thought I was, and he just wanted to get to know me on Facebook, which is why he found me and friended me. And I said, back then, I said, you are getting to know me, you just aren't liking what you're learning, because he was exposed to someone outside of his bubble. And I've tried to talk to him with private messages, and I've always known him from in-person experiences and family events to be a really nice guy. Actually, someone I thought you could count on and like and respect. And I just assumed that it was him being behind the keyboard, the anonymity of it, because I have met people in the past that behave one way in public and another way in a crowd, in a mob, or on Facebook or Twitter. But we came to a breaking point because he put up a post that was just blatantly, obviously, totally racist. And we hadn't really talked about race, and I didn't have any expectation that this was coming. So I called him out for it on his wall, which I think is, what we need to do when someone does something really stupid and puts down another group and disparages them, whether it's based on their sexual orientation, their skin color, their belief system. They're not any less of a person, that we should call that out. And maybe I don't do enough of it. Maybe I do too much. I don't know what the right balance is, but this case, I definitely called it out. And before I could go over to the unfriend button, he unfriended me. And it really kind of struck me as funny because of all the horrible things that he has said to me in the past. I didn't even say anything negative about him. I just said that his post was racist as fuck. And that was it. That was too much for him to handle, being pointed out that something he shared was racist. I didn't say he was a racist for sharing it. Although, anyway, I just said that the post was racist. And that was that. But I was going to unfriend him myself, but I kind of lost that little pleasure of hitting that button myself. So I tried. Because I also am aware of the counter argument that if we all decent people unfriend the people that are racists, bigots, homophobes, whatever, they only hear from each other and it doesn't help. And there's merit to that argument too, but at some point I've got to limit my exposure to the crazy, and there's a lot of it out there. I still have a couple of conservative, Trump-loving, Fox News-watching, conservative Christian friends, and I see their posts, and it's absolutely nutso out there. And one of the more fun ones, thankfully, a friend of mine posted a picture of the flag with the Pledge of Allegiance on it, and they had him bolded "Under God," and dared people to share this image. And this is one of those people that never ever has anything to say, just shares some nasty memes. And so I commented on it and I asked if they support the original Pledge of Allegiance, and they said, of course. And then I said, did you realize that the original Pledge of Allegiance was written by a socialist? And he's like, no. And I said, did you realize the original Pledge of Allegiance didn't say under God? He's like, where are you getting this information? So I used the Google and I send him a link, and then I added in a video clip, one of my personal favorites, and you might want to use it. It's a video clip. I believe the movie is called The Bells of St. Mary's. It is Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby. Oh, shit. Let's go with Frank Sinatra. And there's actually a scene of a Catholic schoolyard with a bunch of Catholic children doing the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag on a pole. And they say the Pledge of Allegiance, and this is from 1954, before the Pledge of Allegiance was modified to add under God. And I think there's also an old Porky Pig one too. But it's a nice thing to share with somebody when you have that discussion with them. And it's always nice for me to lead in with, do you support the original Pledge of Allegiance? Because they don't know the history of it. So that's good fun. But the conspiracy theory stuff about COVID and it's a hoax, it's fake. Wow. Absolutely, truly stunning. And sometimes I fear for humanity. And it brings to mind, and I don't remember the quote. Maybe I should have looked it up. Maybe I'll see if I can find an audio clip for you. Carl Sagan and many others had talked about this idea that our ability to use technology exceeds our ability to understand technology and can become dangerous. And a lot of people that live in the modern world just don't have a basic fundamental understanding of how the world works and how information is shared and how to fact check, how to think about what you're being presented with, how to be skeptical with the things that you're being presented. And so many people just cannot accept that what they just said might be wrong, even when shown factually that it's wrong, which is something I've talked about on the show before. I make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, but I make mistakes specifically about what is supposedly my area of expertise, investing. And when people point that out to me, I come on the show and I make a correction. And I've had people tell me not to do that because it ruins my credibility. Well, to that person, I say, fuck you. If I make a mistake, I want to get better. I want to learn from that. I want to correct that. And it's a challenge. It's humbling to think that you told thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people something that was wrong, and embarrassing to go and admit it. But I think that's important. And so if I make other mistakes, which I will, and you guys will let me know, and I actually might not handle it as good as I should, as well as I should, as perfectly as I should, but I do want that information. I do want to know that I've made a mistake so I can correct it. So anyway, I'm just prattling on. Thank you for being here and listening to the Phil Ferguson Show. Got some fun shows coming up. Hopefully, I have coming up one of the authors of a book all about private equity funds, and I'll save that for that show, but it is going to blow your mind what's going on in the industry and the business world. It's absolutely fascinating. But for another show, I'd like to say that I'll meet you somewhere in person, but actually I'm thinking I don't want to see you in person until all this COVID stuff is done. So I do hope to see you someday in the future. Until then, ciao.
What? I'm gonna go to church, only got 20 minutes to the service. I saved the puppy, gonna tie my money. I'm an awesome Christian.
Yo, walk up to the church like, what up, it's me and H. Diddy. I'm so pumped about Christ, I brought a friend with me. King James in my right, testimony in my left. This ain't no pocket Bible.
Dang, it's bigger than the rest.
Rolling in Christian tea, heading to the meet and greet. Shaking sweaty hands, please re-sanitize me. Smelling so sweet, girls beside hugging me. Shoes be flying up, I'm washing people's feet. Ooh, man. But I'm a servant, baby.
Copping and washing, about to go and get some compliments. Spiritual moccasins, Jesus steps I'll be walking in. I'll be your Boaz, and you be my Ruth. I lean, true love waits, I'm teaching it to you. I lead with Billy Graham style, lead with Billy Graham style. Now for real, let's hang out. Would you like to pray a while? Tailor-made suit, looking nicer than the pastor. Is this revelation feeling flyer than the rapture? You didn't bring your Bible.
You didn't bring your Bible?
It's cool, I brought 6, cause I'm just that reliable.
Hello, hello, my pastor man, my fellow. Is that a Jonas brother?
No.
Witness to some atheists.
Please convert those.
Non-believers be like, is that Tim Tebow?
I'm gonna go to church, only got 20 minutes to the service. I saved a puppy, gonna tie my money. I'm an awesome Christian. I'm gonna go to church, only got 20 minutes to the service. I saved a puppy, gonna tie my money. I'm an awesome Christian.
What do you know about rocking? Christ's forgiveness. What do you know about wearing the bright gold tie clip? I'm the pastor. I know how to lead the flock. I'm like Tim Tebow. I'm a spiritual jock. Thank your granddad for giving his 10% tithe. Cause right now I'm praying that, well, he's still alive. I write 40-minute sermons.
No commercials.
I study every week.
With no rehearsals.
I can marry Barry Dunk and drop some serious religious funk. I got the best parking spot in the land, number 2 in command. I'll pull you out of quicksand with my spiritual hand. Cause under this steeple, I'm the man. I have like 5 dying puppies this week. I have a soft side. You don't believe me? Why don't you check out my cufflinks? I don't auto-tune my sermons because I'm already pitch perfect. Like John 3:16. I am worth it. Serving Lord's Supper, call me Betty Crocker. When you take the bread, you'll be falling down at the altar. I'm here with my arms wide open. You're a sinking ship at sea and I'll embrace you like the ocean. Check my notes. This ain't fire and brimstone. Hey, if Jesus ain't calling, turn off your cell phone.
Don't be a hypocrite, believe what you say. Heaven's beating at your chest like Dr. Dre.
Go to church next Sunday. Don't give me an excuse. Eat up your daily bread and drink your Jesus juice.
I'm gonna go to church, only got 20 minutes to the service. I saved a puppy, gonna tie my money. I'm an awesome Christian.
I'm in a choir robe. I look incredible. I'm on the second row, about to sing my third solo. I'm in a choir robe.
Come on.
I look incredible.
Serve it up for my spiritual
I'm
sons.
on
Come
the
on.
second row, about to sing my third solo.
I'm gonna go to church, only got 20 minutes to the service. I saved a puppy, gonna tie my money. I'm an awesome Christian.